And hello, everybody. We are live on, where are we? Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram over here on my phone with the very lovely Sam Palmer Midlife Makeover. Sam, you're a nurse. You also are sort of a fitness and midlife guru. You know probably more than anybody else what it's like for women who haven't exercised for a very long time to suddenly think I have to do this, and how daunting it is. What do they tell you when they come to you?
Oh my gosh. I've always specialized in women who are reluctant to be with me, whatever their age. When I was coaching them in their 40s, they were reluctant, their 50s, they were reluctant, and they're still reluctant. And I think the biggest thing is still fear. It's fear of being the one that sort of can't do it, that's left behind, that hasn't got the right kit on, that, it just feels stupid. Fear is a big part, isn't it, of the female psyche, particularly when it comes to fitness, of not fitting in.
Exactly. So you mentioned, yes, fear of not. I've just typed help here instead of hello. Because barriers to entry, really, aren't they? Sort of like, yes, fear that you, as you said, I'm not going to fit in, that people are going to laugh at you, that if you go to the gym, you're not wearing the right stuff. Does any of that matter? Because, I know I'm 10 kilos overweight. I go to the gym and I don't care if anybody's laughing at me. I wear T-shirts that are old, that have holes in them. To me, I don't care. But how do you get other people past that sort of barrier of thinking that people are looking at me? But most of the time they probably aren't. They're really concentrating on whatever the hell they're doing.
Yeah, I know. I think, just as in the menopause story, there isn't a one size fits all that reassures everybody. I can't pretend that there is. So what I know many people try and do is reduce as many of those barriers as possible by the person sort of getting to know you a little bit before they even start with you, by giving them the answers to their questions, both that they're prepared to ask, but they're not prepared to ask. Women won't say, what happens if I wee a bit if somebody makes me do a star jump? So if you can answer their questions right at the beginning by saying, hey, we don't do star jumps, suddenly you're reducing every barrier, excuse, situation that they can find to not do something. I was talking to a lady on Saturday last week who said she works full time. She's sort of constantly desk bound. She said, I know I need to get stronger. And I said, well, why don't you try online stuff? I hate online. And I said, well, all the time you're hating online, you're not doing anything. You've been saying I hate online for the last 2 years and you're still not doing anything. So isn't it time to perhaps try something? So I try to reduce the barriers to make of things that people are scared about or that they just think they don't like.
Yeah. The peeing is an interesting one, isn't it? Because that, I would imagine now, what do they say? That 50% of women over the age of 50 have a prolapse, around 60% or so experience leakage and urgency. And I know we see a lot of ads for, wearing just, absorbent underwear and disposable things to go and exercise in. But that would really be a limiting factor. All very well not to do star jumps, but are there other things that you can actually say to people that, we can actually help with this?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I've got a lady who joined me because she's an online coach. She wanted to get fitter. Her words, she wanted to get stronger, but she doesn't come from the world where people talk about vaginas and dribbling quite openly. She comes from another world where we talk about things that are a bit scary. And she asked me if she could stay after one of my classes, I don't know, about 6 or 8 weeks ago, and just have a chat with me, which we duly did. And she said, I've never really mentioned this before, but when I go out for a walk in the morning, if I stride too wide, I dribble a bit. So I've been wearing pads. It's been like that for 2 or 3 years. And she said, and since I've started the classes, would it be the fact that it stopped, that I'm not wearing pads anymore? And I sort of said, yeah. Really? And I explained that, when you work out in a way that is constantly improving your pelvic floor strength, giving you back that flexibility, because sometimes we're too tight and sometimes we're too loose and all of that. And I'm not a pelvic floor specialist, but some people in my team are, that, that can be the resulting effect. She wasn't expecting that at all. She wanted to look good in her arms. She didn't expect there to be that sort of knock-on effect as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? It's not necessarily just all Kegels, you know, anything that actually improves that sort of core strength and stuff will really can possibly work wonders. Who knows? There you go. So there you go. That's one obstacle out of the way. Then we can deal with that one. The fear of I don't know, people laughing at you. I mean, is doing it at home enough to, you know, to get you started? And if you haven't actually exercised for, you know, 20 years, because as you say, you know, most of us like me, I am desk bound. I literally will probably not move for sometimes 8 hours in a day, except to go and get a cup of tea or go to the loo. If you've only done that, how do you restart?
I think there's various factors in this whole equation, aren't there? I think there is no doubt that we are all exposed to more social media that's showing us how important this is. Okay. And since I've been in this menopause arena 10 years, the demographic of people we see talking about this has hugely changed. So I used to only see people really in their early 50s, either for me as clients or people talking about it. Now we see people talking about it from their late 30s right through to their mid to late 60s, which is fabulous. Now that means that there's potentially 2, maybe even 2.5 decades of people looking for this information. I don't know about you, but what I wanted in my 40s is very different. I'm going to be 60 in a few months. It's very different from what I want now. So I think that the messaging right at the beginning needs to appeal to the right people. So we know that there are some very famous, well-known people all over social media extolling the virtues of the same sort of training as me, exactly the same thing. But what they look like is different. I don't look like that anymore. It's not a problem. It doesn't bother me. So what the people who aren't doing it need to see needs to resonate with them. They need to be reassured that you're not necessarily going to be leaping around in a crop top and feeling like you did when you're 40, because that's not what the aim of this is. That might happen, but that's not the aim of this. It is to appeal to that specific woman and the problems that she's got now. So what we talk about is not what this is going to make you look like, but how are you going to feel if you find yourself in the right place that makes you feel confident enough to start on this new fitness journey. And as often happens with me, I've forgotten the bloody question.
And I blame menopause. No, you're right, because it is the thing, isn't it, that in many ways, you know, I too will be 60 in a few months. We can share a birthday party. We can have a big cake. And you know, for me, it's about being healthy, remaining mobile. I mean, it's difficult for me to see my toes these days, I will admit. But you know, and hopefully one day I will actually be able to see them without bending forward again. So a little bit of weight loss might be good. But it's about making sure that, you know, I am mobile, that I'm reducing my risk of heart disease, that I'm reducing my risk of type 2 diabetes, because these things, you know, the way that adipose tissue around our stomachs works as we get older and the hormones drops really changes the way it deals with fats and sugars, and that puts our risk much higher, doesn't it? So for me, it's about long-term health. I don't want to be in a mobility scooter if I can avoid it. I don't want to have continence issues if I can avoid it, and I want to make sure that you know, my health is optimized as much as it can be. A lot of people might think when they get to 60 or so, they might think, oh, it doesn't matter, I'm too late. It's too late anyway for me, isn't it? But would they? Is it too late?
No, it's never too late. I think one of the things that's important is, you know, we know all the sort of the health reasons, as you've said, there's the cardiac issues, the blood pressure, there's the weight gain. We know all of that. But what does this person actually look like? So most women are working for longer. We can't afford to retire. So we're likely to be more senior in our jobs. Therefore, for many women, we're likely to actually be more sedentary, perhaps more sedentary than we ever were. We're not doing trips to school. We're not taking time out to go to rugby matches and walking to pitches. We're not doing all of that sort of incidental movement that you did as a mum of teenagers or even young children. So we've got that. we are likely to be juggling perhaps elderly relatives. So we're likely to have that constant stress, which means that you've got that guilt thing that if you're not doing your work, you've got to be helping other people. So we're still finding reasons not to put ourselves first. I also think that, so this is like a biopsychosocial thing, isn't it? We've got the fact that potentially we've got more money. And so therefore the way we want to socialize often means more calories. So, we are going out for meals. We're potentially having bottomless brunches. We're doing all of that. So there's that slight change just in our behavior patterns. And I think then you bring into the fact that we're quite set in our ways. And like that lady who I was speaking to last Saturday, we're less inclined to try something new. So there's a whole range of reasons why it's not just that it's too late, but there's all these other factors that are making it slightly more challenging. And then the other thing is, if the place where you've historically always gone is full of what I always call tiny 30-year-olds with their hair in ponytails and boobs where they're meant to be, looking really pert, you walk in.
Are they naturally where they went to be?
That's naturally where they went to be. And you walk in, then, that's not particularly welcoming. I have a phrase that I say quite glibly, but if two of you are in a workout and one of you's male and 35 and you're female and 61, one of you's probably in the wrong place.
Yeah, possibly. It's true. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I went on a retreat a few weeks back to Coombe Grove for was a day. It was a metabolic retreat, and I couldn't stay for the whole week, but I only stayed for the first few days. But they had a dance class one evening, and there were 7 or 8 of us on this retreat, and dance class came around, and we all went up there to do it, and then literally everybody left the room except for me, and one other person stayed because she felt guilty about leaving me there by myself. I felt guilty about the lady who'd come to give the class that nobody wanted to do, and then she felt guilty about leaving me there being the only person to do the class, so she did it with me. And the next day I have zero coordination. I mean, like none. I absolutely completely, I'm dyslexic. I can't read, I can't clap in time to music, and I can't move properly. I was always the last person ever to be picked on a sports team. So in fact, way even last. I was like, do we even have to have her? So that's how bad it is. So we did one song, and actually I thought it was kind of fun, and then I felt really guilty because the woman said, would you like to do another one? And so I said, oh yeah, okay. And the next day I asked the lady, I said, what did you think? I thought it was quite funny. She said, I hated every minute of it. I only stayed because of you, and I felt so bad.
Well, I think that's actually the power of connection as well. I actually think that we're very communal beings, that we need to be connected, and you get a much greater connection if you are in it with somebody else. Now, people often think that you can't do that online. If you're good at it, you really can form communities where friendships are made and support is there. There's just one other thing I wanted to say, and I suppose this is potentially contentious, but we need to face this. HRT for some women is hugely beneficial, and we know that the risks which everybody touted are not the risks that are there now, but we also know that whilst it alleviates many of our menopause symptoms for a long time, and some women say they will choose to stay on it for a long time, it doesn't have the same protective elements for our hearts long term after 10 years as it did when we were younger. So I think it's also important to think, well, what else can I do to help that? Also, I mean, I still am meeting women who have decided that they want to come off it. They want to go natural. That's fine. Everybody needs to make an informed decision. So I think that when you're starting exercise in your 60s, if you haven't done it, it's a really good adjunct to the HRT you might still be taking or you've just started, which will do certain amounts of benefit in the long run, but it's not a panacea for everything.
No, that's true. Yeah, it might help you sort of get that little bit of extra energy you need to sort of hopefully get started if you're lucky, which would be a good thing. I apologise for the noise outside. If you can hear it, they're digging up the road, and they now seem to have started a machine that has an incessant whir to it. I apologise. Yeah, interesting. Apart from I got completely distracted then because of that noise.
Because of the whirring.
Yeah, it was just sort of like, is this ever going to end? The energy is a big thing too. Are there other things so that then people, because often we'll find that anemia, and especially if people have been going through perimenopause and they're bleeding a lot, they might be feeling as I explained yesterday, whenever it was, when I was doing with the chat with Dr. Elise Dallas. As everybody knows, I've been bleeding for the entire year. What a fun year I've had. And literally it got to a few weeks back, my hair's starting to fall out, and I found that I live on the first floor of the building, and if I just going up one flight of stairs, my legs were tired. And I thought, oh my God, this is ridiculous. I'm not that unfit, surely. And then I was talking to one of the GPs, and he said, well, I think you might need an iron tablet. And so I went and got my iron tablets about 4 weeks ago, and the difference literally within 3 days was incredible. So I wonder, making sure that you get pernicious anemia increases around the sort of late 50s and 60s, doesn't it? If it's worth you're getting a blood scan, making sure you've got enough vitamin D, making sure your iron levels are good. Is it other reasons for fatigue, like thyroid levels and things like that, getting them checked?
There's always going to be multiple reasons for people to be exhausted, apart from anything else, just not sleeping very well. So yes, you've got all the disease processes, which can end up with somebody being exhausted, but just this fact that they're not sleeping very well. And for that reason, I believe that the classes or the times that women should be working out for are about half the amount that we used to when we were in our 30s. So my strength classes are 30 minutes. Our HIIT classes are 30 minutes. That means that somebody doesn't feel like they need to spend the rest of the day on the sofa because they're so exhausted they can't move, but equally they're not going to dread it. So the words that I use is that we basically rewrite the rule book. We see things in chunks of an hour, don't we? Our circadian rhythms have their own cycles. We have cycles for everything, but an hour is a nice chunk of time, people have historically thought. For many women like you, for various reasons, who are exhausted, an hour is too long, and you're more likely to get an injury, and you're less likely to commit to doing something at the levels which are going to benefit your bone, your hearts, your muscles and everything else, which is 2 to 3 times a week really. I also believe very strongly, in something that I try and teach, is that there are 3 different types of fitness that are important. And a little bit like a pick and mix we used to have at Woolies all those years ago. You're not English, but I'm sure you remember Woolworths, where you had a selection of the things that you like. Now, having some strength, having some cardio, and having some restorative activity, having them in little movement snacks throughout the day, will also prevent you just getting overtired and overtraining, doing too much.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, breakers, if you are sedentary, there's try and make sure that you things that I never do, but I know that I should. Set an alarm to remind you to get up every so often, and go and do 10 squats, or go and do whatever. Do your squats while you're brushing your teeth, which also I rarely do, but until I've got halfway through to the thing where it's about to turn itself off, and I think I could have been squatting then. But on the times that I have remembered, you can get 50 squats into that 2 minutes of toothbrushing, which is better than nothing.
Well, actually, there's a ratio of how many squats you should be able to do for your age out of a chair, unassisted. Yeah, it's on a post-it note somewhere, but I can't see it with these glasses on. But yes, anything you're doing which is encouraging movement. And the other skill that we lose actually is balance. So I'm fairly well known for suggesting that people clean their teeth standing on one leg, or try taking a shoe and a sock off, all of that sort of thing.
So, yes, you had that shoe and sock challenge.
Yeah,
yes, that was good.
Bring things into day-to-day life, habit stacking. It's much more likely that we'll do it.
Yep, exactly. The balance was one of the things actually I was going to get to, because that is incredibly important for preventing fragility fractures, which is when you break a bone just from falling over from standing, not from falling off the top of a building, and core strength, pulling that sort of stuff together, really, isn't it? So. Apart from standing on one foot, there are other things that people can do to. How long should you be able to stand on one foot for, and how can you improve your balance?
Good Lord, I don't think I know how long you should be able to. I'm not sure if there is a specific answer to that. But even heel-toe walking on a single line, if you put a Dynaband down on the floor, as if you were walking on a tightrope thing, and just even toe hill walking like that forwards and backwards, you're not going to fall anywhere. But even that, believe it or not, feels in your brain like a balance challenge. Always remembering to stand on one leg and then the other one. We will tend to always go for the one that we feel much more confident on. So trying to remember to do other sorts of things. I do silly things like when I'm standing with the shopping trolley, I might stand with one finger on the shopping trolley and do heel and calf raises on one leg. Just so I just try and bring things like that into my day. If there is a low wall that you see a toddler walking along when you're out at the weekend and you think, oh, that toddler's walking along the wall, you walk along it. Why not? We used to do things like that for fun. And actually we've stopped because, again, as we mentioned right at the top of this, our fear of everything goes up. We stop doing things like that. When you go on holiday to those places where there's boat trips and you go out for the day on a boat trip and there's nearly always a gangplank to walk down to get onto the boat trip, the amount of people I see hanging on to that gangplank, which is actually, quite wide, as if they're going to fall over into the sea because they just haven't walked on anything narrow and wobbly. Working your balance in as many different ways as possible is beneficial for us. Yes, because nobody wants a fractured neck of femur, a fractured neck of the top of your leg bone. It's the knock-on effects are not good.
No, they are not, as we know. Mortality rates after having a hip replacement are not good.
No, they're not good. Yeah.
The other thing about that is that I've now forgotten as well, because I am completely losing my mind today, because I did have a shocking night's sleep last night. I have completely forgotten, apart from balance. What was it? What was I going to say?
You mentioned core stability. Were you going to talk about that?
No, it wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. It wasn't that at all, but there you go. I will get there. Yes, no, I do remember that. Basically, okay, the length of time that you need to actually do something to get a benefit from it. These seem to have varied since I was at university, because I remember before they used to say that you needed 30 minutes of cardiovascular exercise a day to have a heart benefit, but I think they brought that down to around about 12 minutes. And I think for bones, I think they're saying you need around about 10 minutes worth of stuff to be getting that
impact.
And impact is important, isn't it? So for bones, it really does need to be weight bearing or resistance training, doesn't it?
Yeah, to what tends to happen with our bones in the period of time after we are in menopause is they become much more porous, much more likely to break, as you know. And there are two things that we need to do. We want to prevent that continuing on its cycle and ideally make them get stronger. And there are two different techniques for doing that. So generalized weight-bearing activity is preventative. It helps them prevent losing their density, if you like. But to actually make them stronger, you're right, you need to add resistance. So resistance is anything where there's an impact. Now, this is interesting. Because I'm a running coach, I meet a lot of people who have continued to run into their 50s and 60s. It's something they do regularly. And they think that they're doing weight-bearing exercise that will make them strong throughout their body. But the weight-bearing effect of running goes roughly up to your pelvis. If you fall over, you put down your hand, your wrist, you get a Colles fracture, or you break your arm, or you get your shoulder, or whatever. So this weight-bearing activity needs to be throughout your body. So we need to make sure that we are doing some upper body stuff as well. And whether that's Dynabands or your own body weight with press ups against the wall or a chair or the floor if you're already there, but you may not be if this is new to you. So we do need to look at this as a whole thing, a whole centered approach.
Yeah, that's very, very true, actually, isn't it? And things like, I cannot put weight on a flat hand because it hurts. So, we've got pain things to get around as well, actually.
Yeah, so, absolutely, yeah.
We need the hacks on those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I don't think people realize is that motion is lotion. That actually, the more we move in a way that's right for us now, the more we can reduce some of this joint, bony, menopause-related pain. And when people have got injuries, people often say, well, I can't come, I've hurt my elbow. Well, what about your other arm and your two legs and your core?
Oh, you've frozen.
Is that me? Have I frozen?
I think you're back now. Yep, go again. You said we got to come in with your. What about your other arm and the two legs?
Everything else works. So when we have got a problem, and given that we heal so much more slowly now, if we've got a problem in our right wrist, we need to find things that we can do with everything else. And so these exercise programs need to be tailored to individuals. I don't think I've got really anybody in my online membership that hasn't got some kind of niggle. You've got a knee, you've got a bit of a back, I've got a bit of a shoulder. Fine, that's fine. Let's work with it. Because then you start to feel good and then you move more, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I can't imagine there'd be many people without either a knee or a back problem, at least.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, or all of them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think I literally remember you talking to the very lovely menopause Pilates during COVID, and honestly, I don't think that there was a single joint in my body that didn't have an issue. Frozen shoulder, knees were wrecked, neck was sore, back was sore, and that's actually probably really because during that COVID I wasn't I put on 10 kilos. I wasn't moving nearly as much as I had been before. The incidental exercise of walking up to the tube and back was gone. The gym was shut. And even though I was sort of running up and down the stairs in the building, it wasn't really enough at all just to keep it going. Yeah.
We are designed to move throughout our lives. We are designed to move, and our body objects to being sat in a chair in this sort of chair-shaped position for 90% of our lives. But the way that we live our lives requires us to be in that situation. So therefore, building up new neural pathways, new thought processes that are sort of banishing that and not allowing it to happen is quite tough. It's quite a big change in people's thought process to think, how can I move more? It doesn't happen overnight, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. So practical steps then. So let's say it's somebody like, well, not me because I work from home, but let's say it is somebody who actually goes out to work, jumping off the tube or the bus or stop earlier to get an extra, 500 meters worth of walking in. Are there other practical tips like that, or things that, they can do at home as well, like getting out a couple of tins of baked beans and...
Yeah. So the one that I always say to people in work is, if you can stand up when you're on the phone, as long as you're not going to have a hot panty phone call, then that's a really simple thing to do. If you're in a workplace situation
where might like a hot panty, you never know.
If you're in a situation at work where you can have walking meetings with people, can I catch up with you about blah blah? Should we just go and walk around the car park? Are there situations where realistically it's not always applicable? But one of the big ones is, if you are drinking 2 liters of water a day, you need to wee quite a lot. And there's probably a wee station fairly close to you, but there's probably one 3 floors up. And if you can always go to the furthest away toilet, it's just a simple thing that it just puts more day-to-day movement in your life. If you can have a Dynaband in your drawer at work, if I got one here, and you can just do some simple upper body stuff, some bicep curls under the arm of your chair, even having that in your workplace is a good idea. Yes, there's always the things, park the furthest away and all of that. But I think often the objections to those sorts of things are because we're always in a hurry. So when we get to the supermarket and we park furthest away, we're always in a hurry. So we need to make these little changes really, really fit. But I think that one of the biggest change is to embrace the idea of movement snacks throughout your day. What can I fit in? When is my best 10 or 15 minutes to say, right, I'm going to alternate some tin cans or water bottles with some squats at home or at work? They don't actually make you sweaty either. Given that most people don't want to get sweaty within a working day, because we need to look presentable. So you need things that are presentable. And then, of course, you can't avoid walking, daily walking. Everybody should ideally get outside for between 10 to 20 minutes before midday to walk in one of many varieties of ways: uphill, downhill, fast, slow, listening to the birds, listening to music, but getting light into their eyes. That also, I think, is just so simple, and it's free.
And it will help with your sleep.
Yeah.
The question over here, Lana is asking, what's a good exercise for when your calves keep locking? Now, I'm assuming that she means cramping by locking, but I'm not really sure. What do you think?
Calves tight. Stay well hydrated. Because often if people are not hydrated enough, everything gets a little bit crampy. So drinking lots of water is really important. It could be a good idea to foam roll or rub or tennis ball your calves prior to doing exercise and afterwards. Any kind of movement that warms everything up. But often our calves are tight because things are tighter higher up the chain. So is it that she's doing other things that are leading to tight calves? So it's a difficult thing to sort of diagnose just simply, but it's often a chain of events. You can even have tight calves because your back or your neck or your shoulders are tight.
Yep, from the jaw down. Yeah. This is a really interesting one, actually, because I'll tell you about my knee. There's nothing.
Tell me about your knee.
Nothing more fascinating than my knee. Often when you get that pain under the patella, and it becomes quite difficult to walk, people, the first place you go to is, well, you need to strengthen up your quads. So I went to the physio because it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And the physio said, you're just not working it hard enough. Up those weights, keep on going. It just continued to get worse and worse and worse. So in the end, actually, I went to a private physio, and he sent me off for an MRI because he was thinking, we're going to have surgery here. Your patella's obviously just shot to death. The meniscus is probably a complete waste of space. It's probably a mess in there. Came back, MRI was absolutely perfect, absolutely nothing wrong. It turned out that it was that fascial tightness, and literally from the calves to beyond my bottom and way up. And he set about, massaging it, and literally I do have a potty mouth, it's true, but fortunately, he's a tough New Zealand farmer from background. So as I was swearing at him how much I really effing hated him at that moment, he understood. But that was excruciating. But those foam rollers that you mentioned, the first few times I did them, when I went back to the gym, because he said, get yourself onto the foam roller, do the whole front and back of your thighs, do the calves if you can, which I haven't really quite worked out how to do on a foam roller yet. Excruciating, but the knee is so much better. Yeah. I remember I did anatomy at uni, as you know, and I remember way back then, 40 years ago, people thought that fascia just really did nothing apart from make a compartmentalize a muscle. But now it's a really metabolically active and important part of your whole structure.
Really important.
It's sort of like when you get a bit of chicken and you peel the skin off and you see that sort of the thin, looks like plastic in a way. That's what we're talking about, because it conducts nerve signals. It does a whole bunch of stuff now that they've discovered. That's why I love science, because things change.
Yeah, absolutely, they do. They really do change. What we learned when we were in our 30s is very different now. We definitely know that. Yeah.
I remember when people came up with brown fat, and I was going, brown fat? There's no such thing as brown fat, only to find that, yes, actually there was, and things do change. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, the whole fascial side, again, which is why motion really is lotion, because it sort of dries out. It doesn't literally dry out, but it becomes much tighter. And it's the movement that actually loosens it, or sort of hydrates our fascia and alleviates pain. Absolutely. Yeah. Really important. Really important.
So that stretching is really, really, really important. Yeah. I remember a lot of sports trainers over the years have said, you don't have to worry about stretching, it really doesn't do anything, but you do.
Yeah. And actually, just going back to foam rollers, because we've got a foam roller class coming up in a couple of weeks' time, we only prescribe or advise people to use the soft foam rollers. There's a particular make that when you squeeze them, there's a little bit of give, because if you foam roll on something that doesn't give, all you're doing is squeezing that fascia, and it's just going to hurt. Nothing is actually going to soften. So it needs to have the sort of give that a tennis ball has for it to actually be effective. Otherwise, it's just hurting you for now.
So I'm not very happy when the only ones left are the ones with the sort of little lumpy bits on it. So do I have to use that one? No, I don't like that one. That's not a lot of fun. All right, so basically we're upping our incidental exercise. We're walking up and down the stairs. We're grabbing a few tins out of the cupboard. We're making sure We're hydrating, even though I live on tea. What else? Anything else that people should think about that is easy to do just to get them started and make them feel like, you know what, I can actually do this?
What I suggest that people do is they look at there's something actually magical happens when you get a pen and a piece of paper and you map out, what does my week look like Monday to Sunday? So there's generally going to be 2 days in a week. They may or may not be together, where you've got more time, and then there's generally more days when you've got less time. And then you think realistically, when can I get out for 10 minutes walk? And plot that in your timeline. And once you've put your walks in, then you think, okay, realistically, when can I fit in a workout, and what do I want it to be? What do I like doing? If you love Zumba, that's your workout. If you love ballet, that's your workout. If you want to go back to rugby, go back to rugby, but it needs to be something you love. And when you sort of sit and think, okay, am I going to go back to ballet or whatever it is? And if your stomach makes that churn and thinks, oh God, then don't do it. This is the time of our lives where we really need to do things we love and we look forward to. And we love it almost all the way through the 30 minutes, even the bit when your ass is on fire. But generally, you're really enjoying the process. So I think it's time to dump anything that you don't love and to think, okay, so I've got to get some strength. I've got to get some cardio. I've got to get some restorative activity. How can I get my cardio? If you don't like classes or you don't like dance stuff, get it walking. Just say, right, I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to walk fast. Fine, that's your cardio done. The strength is often the thing that people find more challenging to know how to start. So as you say, tins of beans or bottles of water, and you start really simply with 1 or 2, 3 exercises. I've got stuff on YouTube, the stuff on my website, people can have a look at. It's everywhere. But it's more about, Fiona, finding the time that you'll do it in. Because we can find examples of things to follow everywhere. But nobody says to you, sit down and look at your diary and commit. And just start with 2 things a week. Do that for a month, 6 weeks, and then think, okay, I'm going to add something else and go that way.
Yeah, making the habit out of it too, because actually, I mean, even after that retreat as well, I swore to myself that I was going to get up every morning and go for a walk, and I did it for about 2 weeks, and I felt actually so much better for getting out, because normally I roll over out of bed, pick up the phone, start the social media, start doing the posting, start doing this, and it's really, really, really unhealthy. And I found that doing that for a couple of weeks, I actually felt much better. My day was more productive, but it has dropped off again. So it's making that commitment and actually making sure that you do sort of get out and do it, really, isn't it?
Perhaps you should be joining me at 8 o'clock every morning, 3 times a week.
Perhaps I should.
Perhaps you should. We heard it here live. Fiona said, perhaps I should.
It was not a commitment. But yes, theoretically, I should. Yeah, because it is hard to actually make yourself get out, and especially when it's cold and it's wet and it's not very inspiring out there.
Yeah. But when you know that you're turning up with a bunch of other people who also have still got their pajamas on, have also got bed hair, have also just made a space beside their bed, and they're also going to do something they don't really want to do, but they know it's going to make them feel really good for 30 minutes, then you think, okay, I'll do it. And
is that what you're doing? You're doing this online at 8 a.m. in the morning? You're torturing people at 8 a.m. in the morning? Yep.
And they turn up voluntarily, 30 of them.
Wow.
3 times a week. And then we have other classes as well. So the online platform allows people to do whatever classes they want. I particularly teach the strength classes. And they turn up willingly, believe it or not, and they say how much they enjoy it.
And no special equipment required?
They start with water bottles and cans, and gradually, as people become more confident, I tell them what they might like to buy. And people go from lifting a kilogram to lifting 5 in months. But people don't want to start with 5 kilograms. That's really scary. And if you haven't done that, that's a heavy weight to start with, particularly given that our muscle strength has gone down as we've got older. We're not 40 anymore. We're not automatically still lifting that kind of weight in day-to-day life in many situations. When you're younger, just what you do in day-to-day life, you're sort of moving furniture around, or you're lifting kit bags all the time or whatever. You just are lifting that weight. when that stage of our life has gone, you know, okay, yeah, it might be lifting shopping bags or your pumpkins or your suitcases, but it's not necessarily day-to-day life.
Yeah, exactly. But we are going to need that extra strength later on. But also, because I mean, I did a chat the other night with a very lovely pelvic floor physio from Ireland, Lorraine, and she was saying that she's got women now because, you know, when they, as their partners get, you know, weaker and frailer as they get older, they have to help them with movement, and they find they're getting prolapses because, so we need to keep that strength really, because we may need it for lifting other people later on.
Well, I mean, you know, several of my clients have had to lift their elderly parents up off the floor when they've been called over to their, you know, flat. Mum's fallen. You know, mum's still a dead weight. She's terribly light, but she's still a dead weight. But actually, I could lift her. Wow. You know, that is, it's part of, we have to look at this not for what we want to look like, but actually how we can lift our grandchildren, you know, run after people, take ourselves to the toilet, do all of the things that we want to be able to do as we get older.
Yeah. Yep. Very important. The changes we make today will affect how we are in 20 years.
Absolutely. The difficulty bit that we're discussing is, how do you start? And yeah, you need to feel comfortable and safe and not exposed, and that you're going to be teased or anything like that.
Yeah. Do they have to turn their cameras on, or can they do it? Can they do it in their own dark silence, just sort of looking at you?
I have one lady who has her camera off. She lives on the beach, not literally on the beach, but you can see the sea behind her in Scotland. She has a stunning view, and she says that she likes to exercise looking at the view, listening. She watches me, but she has her camera off. Otherwise, everybody else has the camera on.
There you go. They don't have to if they don't want to. Yeah,
no.
They feel they can turn it off.
No.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because in the beginning you might. I mean, I remember going to an exercise class once. You know, given my lack of coordination, and they had the big round balls, and some of the exercises you had to sit on the ball. I fell off the ball. Then they had another one where you had to hold the ball between your legs, and literally I dropped it on my face. And so usually I was just at the back of the room in the end, just in tears, laughing at myself. But you could imagine that for a lot of people that would be kind of embarrassing, and they'd feel really quite daunted.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is where having a nursing background means that perhaps possibly I approach these things in a slightly different way. I'm never going to say get your ass to the grass or anything like that I think you hear people say in boot camps and things like that. It's just not me.
I mean, that sounds painful, actually. Yeah, there we go. Brilliant. Any other tips for getting off the couch and getting moving as we age?
I'd say just find something that makes you excited about the thought of it, and write down when you're going to do it and give it a go.
Yeah, and that's the thing though. I mean, if you've actually found that you've never enjoyed sport, you don't like any of it, you've just generally really hated it for your entire life, finding that thing is really not going to be easy.
Yeah, absolutely. The lovely Libby, who I know that you know, yoga teacher, she is my yoga teacher on my platform. And she, I know, is not somebody who said she would have enjoyed strength classes at all. And actually, I'm not a yogi, but the two of us have discovered that actually there's huge benefit in doing each other's classes, because we have, we've discovered that it brings us huge benefit. But I think you have to trust people first before you give these things a go, which is why I think the relationships and perhaps following somebody for a while and seeing how they talk and whether they're the right person for you is part of the barrier breaking down before somebody even starts working with a trainer. That trainer needs to be the right person for you. So it's not only the activity that needs to be right, it's the person who you are being inspired by as well needs to be right.
Yeah, and there has to be a real understanding of where the person is in where they are really. I remember being at the gym a little while back, and I was outside doing my little weights outside the assessment room, and there was a trainer in there with a woman. He was saying, "I need to get your weight," and she said, "Well, I don't want to be weighed," and he said, "Well, I need to get your weight," and she said, "I don't want to be weighed," and they had this back and forth argument for about 5 minutes, and it's sort of like, listen to the woman. She just does not want to be weighed. It's not necessary. You really don't have to have that. If she's not, I mean, she'll never come back.
No.
So she'll just that's it. It's done. Listen to the person, and if they're not comfortable with it, move on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you have to be comfortable with it, and you have to have things that are realistic too. I mean, when I paid my way through university taking aerobics classes and working in a gym, and I now look back on my former self and I think how bad I was. Just what I would have put people through, because I didn't realize that a 40-year-old woman wasn't a 20-year-old woman. I didn't realize a 60-year-old man or a 60-year-old woman wasn't a 20-year-old woman. I probably tortured these people. I literally tortured them.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that's not good. You have to really have some sort of form of understanding of where they're at, and making it enjoyable, making it fun for them somehow.
We don't know what we don't know, do we?
No.
You can't know that.
No, in retrospect you can't, but just, yes. It always, so I look at, I sit there in the gym while I'm on the bike and I'm looking at them going, probably I wouldn't do that with that woman.
People still come to me and say to me, I'd like to run a marathon, will you coach me to run a marathon? And if somebody's got a running history and they really want to run a marathon, then yeah, maybe that, that's something that, this is not part of what I do online, but that's something I would do. But why would you want to run a marathon if you've not got a running history and it's just one of those boxes you think you might tick? Again, people don't know what they don't know. They don't know how much time commitment and how much work goes into ticking that box. And so sometimes my role is to potentially say, why don't you start with 5K and see what happens? Start with much more manageable chunks, make it much, much more realistic for people.
Absolutely. But even to get to that, I remember years ago when I used to run, and then I stopped for a while and I started again, and literally I could barely make the distance between 2 telegraph poles. Yeah. But that's how I restarted again. I'd do 2 telegraph poles one day, walk the next one, and then, around the block until I could actually increase it so I could do every telegraph pole around the block. Absolutely. And continue. It was just making those little everyday sort of like, well, I'll do another telegraph pole. So just, starting off with things that are basically realistic to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's not too late.
It's never too late. It is never, ever too late. I agree. That's the optimistic side of these things. There's always an upside to something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Don't know
we are not over yet.
We are definitely not.
Definitely not.
I think my husband is actually trying to kill me because he suggested that I swim the channel to raise money for the Menopause Research and Education Fund.
Wow.
Yeah, that's not the reaction I had. I was sort of looking at him and he said, look, this woman, she's 70, she's just swum it. And I'm like, I am not swimming the channel. I don't like cold water. No, it's never going to happen. I like swimming, but I am not swimming the channel. Sorry.
No, there's 2 things I won't do. I'll never write a book and I'll certainly never swim the channel.
Well, there you go. That makes 2 of us probably on both fronts. So brilliant. All right, Sam, is there anything else that we should think about? No,
I think that's it from me.
Yeah, excellent. Where do people find you, should they wish to find you?
I am on midlifemakeover.co.uk. That's my website. I'm on LinkedIn under the same title, Sam Palmer, Midlife Makeover. The same on Insta and in my Facebook group.
Brilliant. That's lovely. And Anna down here is saying, yeah, swim the channel and laughing at us. Only if you come with us, Anna. Then we'll do it. More than happy to help somebody else in a boat.
Yeah, cheer them on.
Exactly. Brilliant. Look, thank you so much, Sam. And I will speak to you soon. So I'll end this here and I will talk to you soon.
Take care. Thank you very much for watching, everybody.
You too. Bye.
Bye.